Knife sharpening. What a subject. There's 1,000 ways at least, and I might be underestimating, ways to sharpen a knife. I'm not against some of the modern techniques, honestly. When I need to sharpen a bunch of kitchen knives, I grab the Ken Onion Work Sharp right off my shelf and zip them right down. It works really well for me. It's a nice mechanical thing I can plug into a wall and knock out some good sharpening with. There's several other 100 brands and makes and models out there of good knife sharpeners, but there's a lot of knife sharpeners that are laughable in comparison. So instead of going through each and every single one of those and discussing the pros and cons of the mechanical knife sharpening techniques out there, I'm going to cover the basics of what you're doing with a knife, how to do it, and how to do it in the field or in a survival situation with no power and just the items that you can procure. Now, what I mean by that is procure prior to the event, because we will be using a file, we will be using a whetstone, W-H-E-T, whetstone, not a whetstone, W-E-T. The W-H-E-T whetstone is, if you look up the term wet, it's to hone or to grind, and we'll be grinding and honing using that whetstone later. This one here is another form of whetstone. This is my grandpa's old whetstone. He used this for years and years. It needs a little maintenance, so I won't be using it today. It really needs this metal floated out of here with a little bit of oil. I need to do some real maintenance on this guy and make sure it's good for the future. In fact, I'm going to use my oil here and just get that started. Now, whetstone maintenance could be a whole episode on its own, but it'll suffice to say that if you're using a stone to grind metal, the metal flakes are going to end up in the stone and make it less and less viable. So if you use oil, you can work those metal flakes out and literally float them out of the stone and clean that off. And I'm going to let those float. I'm going to work it in, clean it off as we go. This one here I keep a little closer eye on. It's the one I use on a daily basis. One that I keep in front of my ruck for whatever knife we have. All right. I do not carry a file out in the field. I do not bring one of these with me unless I'm going to be doing extensive axe work or if I'm using a draw knife on logs, the kind of thing where this is really going to be necessary. I usually just carry the whetstone. This is because the file is meant for setting the bevel. The bevel is the angle in which the tip of the knife meets, and the drawings here, these representations, they've been over exaggerated. What I mean by that is you're not going to have a bevel that is that sharp unless you're dealing with like a splitting maul or a axe of some sort. And we're looking at that as if we're looking down the blade just like this. You see mine's a little dirty there from the tinder show that we just put on, the different types of tinder, man-made and natural. This one is going to be more closely going to resemble this angle here, a very tight angle, like a 22.5 degree angle is what they'll say there. It's half of 45. I guess that makes it easy. I'm not out there with a compass or a protractor determining what angle I'm using. I just know a shallower angle here is going to be sharper. However, you're more liable to chip or damage this edge if you used it improperly than you would with like a axe or a maul in this case. These are the two bevels that I'm going to be creating. We'll be leaning this way today, and I'll be doing an axe episode later here. These other two are other types of bevels you can get from different sharpening techniques. This one's called an appleseed bevel because it's rounded to the outside. It's a convex curve, and this appleseed provides a lot of strength to that tip, so you don't get that chipping as you would with the shallow bevel. However, when it wears out, when that tip nicks off, you need to take down a lot of material each time you grind this, and you got to know what you're doing here. If you try to do a straight grind on an appleseed bevel, you're not even going to be sharpening the tip. You're just going to be clearing off of these round edges until you set that bevel into your standard straight edge bevel. Appleseed grinds are wonderful. The Ken Onion Work Sharp that I use in the kitchen, it makes an appleseed bevel because the belt grinder bends in a little bit as you sharpen. It doesn't have a backing plate, so as you sharpen that, it bends in and creates that perfect appleseed. This here, the concave beveled. I've again exaggerated it. This is not what it's going to look like. It's going to be much more shallow than that. I find that works really, really well with large kitchen knives, because as you're slicing a tomato, those slices, if they are stuck flat to flat with your knife, they get stuck. But if you have a concave, as you cut, the slice will bend away from your main work surface, and you can cut a little faster and with a little more precision as you're working your food. So we will not be doing these two, but be aware they're out there. If we're going to talk about bevels, I should talk about bevels, and we have. We're going to be doing a little simpler technique here with the tools that we have. Deburring is going to be using the rough side of our whetstone in order to knock off these burrs. Burrs are what happen when you're grinding on a bevel and one edge gets ground over and creates this burr. Burrs can feel sharp. If you're feeling the edge of your knife for sharpness, which I do not advocate for, you can feel a burr and think, oh man, it's got a little grab to it. It's got good bite. That could just be the burr. So we need to knock those off with the rough side of our stone if we're going to maintain a knife that doesn't dull quickly and doesn't have that false edge on it. It's more like a micro serration, if you think about it that way. Serrated being the cuts in a knife blade that cut rope really well but are very difficult to sharpen. You'll notice on most of my knives I do not have a serration. I like having straight edge. You can actually feel a little burr on this one from working on the ferro rod, so this is going to be applicable today. And then honing is to use the fine side to bring in that edge. Now when I hone, and again, exaggeration, I'm not going to hone on that same angle. I'm going to hone slightly more towards the tip, so I know I'm working here with this honing edge. It does not take off a lot of material. It takes off very minimal material. So if I'm honing the whole thing, the whole bevel, it could take a long time to get a sharp knife edge. Now when I was, I don't know, 10, 12 years old, and I got my first fixed blade knife and I was all excited. It was a Winchester from Walmart, and I got a stone like this. I tried to bring the bevel back, the bevel here being the shiny part, or soon to be shinier part. I tried to bring that bevel back all the way and have a single beveled edge from spine all the way down, and I spent days grinding the knife just like this, thinking, oh man, it sets its own bevel. I ended up making a knife that was super thin, took forever to sharpen, and it failed on me in the field. I was prying on something which you're not supposed to do. I didn't know. I was prying on something and it just snapped the blade right in half. But granted, it's not the best quality knife, and we'll do a knife recommendation video in the future, but it was demoralizing because I'd weakened my blade. You don't need to grind the whole thing. You need to make that edge sharper, and that starts with setting the bevel. Now I'm not going to go through and spend the time to do each one of these as I would in the field. I'm going to show what a few strokes look like this, what we're looking for. This one has a good bevel already, so it won't take any time at all. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take my knife, hold it here, edge towards me, and I'm going to file inward. That is catching on some burrs. I can feel it with the file. And my angle that I'm approaching this at is very slight. I just want to shine up this whole edge all the way down. Now, with a brand new knife, I might be filing for a while to set that bevel to where I want. I might have to take it back a little bit in order to do that. And usually I do. This one you see is already about where I want it. So all I need to do is hit the edge a little bit to make sure there's no major nicks, no major burrs hanging over. And yes, I know we haven't gotten to the deburring portion yet. And you feel that file bite. And I'm getting a lot of bite up here, so I'm going to bring it around and take it down until we have a nice even skate on that side. Whatever we do on this side, we need to do on the other side, because if we don't, we'll have an uneven bevel on our knife. When we're cutting through material, we'll curve one direction or another based on which way we've beveled it improperly. So you can turn this around like this and sharpen this way. I've seen people cut themselves this way, so if you're incapable of doing this, you might want to learn how to do it left-handed here. I've also seen people move the knife down the file this way, similar to like a steel. And a steel is more of a deburring tool, not a bevel setting tool. I've gotten good at doing it this method. I like using my right hand on both sides, and I'm going to bring it in here. Again, I'm not really digging into this guy. If you have the advantage of using like a bench vise or taking a pair of vice grips and clamping this down the first few times that you try this, I highly recommend it so you can get it down. This is just the way that I've learned, I've gotten good at. I can feel a little more burrs here. I'll take those down. It's a good one right down there. We go. Nice. Now, we don't need to take every burr off here. I'm just setting that bevel, like I said, making it nice and smooth, no chips, no unevenness, and make sure it's good on both sides. Now, the burr is unlikely to be created if you're going towards the blade every single time. If you're filing in towards the blade, it takes the burrs off. This burr really happens this badly if you're filing away from the edge and down the blade this way. Like if I were to file this direction on my knife. You know, I've seen people file this way and then this way, and it leaves that major burr on one side. If you have to file this way and this way, I would file the burr first and then take the burr off. That is not my muscle memory, so that is not what I'm going to be doing today. All right, we've set our bevel. We can set this aside. Deburring is going to be using the rough side of our stone, our honing stone, just to knock off anything that stands out from the rest of the bevel. And that's, you'll get some of that from the file marks, the tool marks. I put a little bit of oil on here. It was overdone it a little bit. Let's see what I got. Let's carry some shop towels around. You just want a little coating of that oil. I'm holding this like a bar stool. I don't want anything protruding above. This is bad. I want to have everything down below. I've seen people hold it this way. I have a big thumb, so it kind of goes up over top and I'll cut myself. So I hold it like a bar stool here, and I run the knife over the edge. I don't want too much oil on there. It's going to slip out of my hands. All right. I'm still keeping that same angle. Before I start grinding, I will look at the stone and the edge to make sure that they meet up nicely. If there's any big gaps because the stone has wallowed out, it means I need to reflatten my stone. If there's a gap, a significant gap like this, I know that I'm not at the right bevel. I'm grinding on the face of the knife here instead of on the edge. So you can close that gap until it's near gone, and then you start rolling through. I use circular strokes. Some people do the single strokes. I do those at the very end, but if I'm grinding off some burrs and really polishing the edge of this here, I'm just going to do circular strokes. And then I pick up the edge of the knife at the very end. I count that as 2 and 3, 4, 5. Now you can really hear when it's doing a consistent job. If I did 5 on this side, I'm going to do 5 on this side. You can hear it's a little rough at the beginning. There we go. I can hear the difference. 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to do one more round, maybe 3 this time. 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to repeat until I'm able to look down this blade. Let me grab more shop towel, wipe off this oil. Very careful as I do this because it might already be sharp. I should be able to look down this blade and see consistent texture throughout. I'm not touching the edge here, I'm touching the face. So consistent texture throughout. If I'm missing some pieces, like right there, I see it's not quite as consistent. I'm going to take it down again, make it all consistent. This side, looking right down the edge, I see a little inconsistency here as well, so I need to work on this curve. It's a very common problem issue. Curve here, curve there. So I need a little bit more edge work. I'm probably good down here, so I'm just going to work on that. Another way to tell if you're knocking off those burrs is to look straight at the knife, right down the edge. And it should be difficult to see where the two faces come together, where the bevel meets. If you can't see where the bevel meets, it's because your eye has nothing to see, which means it's a tip. It's going to be faced off, similar to stealth technology. So when you see a glint here, and I don't, mine's looking pretty good. If I were to see a glint or shininess, that shows me that there's something facing me, and there shouldn't be. So I need to grind down until that shininess is gone. It should look almost like an optical illusion. All right, I said I've got a little bit more work to do here on the edge, so I'm going to work those areas. Oop. That oil did get me. Yeah, I can feel it a little bit there. It doesn't slide as smoothly on the stone, and that can happen. That's telling you that you need to do a little bit more work in that area. Starting to get pretty smooth. Now I move my tool over the stone. However, if I'm working on something much larger, like a draw knife or an axe, I move the stone over the tool so I have more control. There we go, I'm very much liking that. Alright, I'm gonna wipe off this oil. I got a little slick there and slipped on the beginning. Luckily I didn't get myself. It's always a possibility. They say a sharp knife is a safe, did I say a sharp knife? A sharp knife is a safe knife. That's because if you're using a dull knife, you tend to push harder and dig in more and end up coming through the material at an awkward angle with too much strength and hurting yourself. However, a sharp knife is also a sharp knife. So be careful of cutting yourself, of course. I've got a few scars here that we could talk about, but it would also reduce my my credibility on the subject. All right, need a little bit of oil on here. I'm gonna do a little bit less this time. Just a little dab. Move it around. There we go, very happy with that. Nice. Now what we're doing here is we've taken off the burr, we're gonna do that final honing. So I'm gonna run a few here at this level. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, if you're dealing with a very sharp knife like this, and I think we're getting there, switching up my style so I can do a little more edge honing. I do this at the end because I'm doing less grinding and more refining. If you're dealing with a very sharp knife, as we will be here very shortly, you can tell by the sound of it, it's very consistent and that it's very sharp. You want to be using the right knife holding and cutting techniques. Some of those are very similar to the rules of firearms. Never point a weapon at something you're not willing to destroy, but we're also never going to cut towards ourselves or anyone else. Yes, knives aren't projectiles, but they will go where you push them, and if that's through the material and into you, that's a possibility. So what am I talking about? How do we do this? The most common issue that we have is with carving, and I'll be using this piece here. Someone will want to get something carved down or knock off a piece of wood. See this little burr here? If you're cutting towards yourself, even if I'm placing a thumb for control, and I've got a little experience here, because even if you're doing this and you've got a nice sharp knife, and I'm not pushing hard because this is a demonstration of knife sharpening tonight and not a demonstration on how to stitch up your thumb. So if I pushed hard and I flow through the material, you can knock it right into your thumb. I have literally multiple scars from this exact issue. So trust me when I say never cut towards yourself. It doesn't matter how skilled you are or how much experience you have. If you're cutting towards yourself, you see someone cutting towards themselves, you should correct them in a gentle way. You don't want to ruin a friendship over something like that. But so I'm always going to be carving away. That way, if it flies through the material, it digs into something else and not a body part. It's always better to overshoot than it is to cut into yourself. I have a nice sharp edge on this. I'm going to test it, not by feeling with my thumb or scraping a fingernail or any of those techniques, or shaving arm hair. Those are all cutting towards yourself, every single one of those. So I like to test this on material. I can run some paracord over it, or I can try to cut some cotton or a pair of jeans like I did earlier for the sewing video, or I can just see if it cuts through wood. Will it carve off in a nice and easy manner a piece of wood? Now if I'm doing like a feather stick, I want to see if the entire edge cuts. So I'm gonna start checking there. Honestly, it seems a little dull right at that edge that we were working on. It flows through the material at the tip. We get a little slow. That's a little slow right there. And then after I get past that, nice sharp edge. So it's gliding through the material pretty well. There's a better example there. And I'm not using a lot of force here, because you shouldn't have to. I'm creating these little feathers here. These are not what I would consider feathers for a feather stick. Yes, you can light those on fire. We did in the previous video, but we're going to be doing a whole different presentation of that. So that deserves its own video. This is just me testing the sharpness of this knife. All right, that was nice and easy. If I go a little bit harder on here, you see a cut all the way through. Dug out a big chunk of this material. Very nice. So if I wanted to really dig through some material, my knife is very useful. Buffy would be proud. Alright, that's knife sharpening in a nutshell. Like I said, there's a lot of different ways to do this. There's a lot of different schools of thought, and there are better and worse ways than what you saw here today. This is the method that I use. I set my bevel with a file, I deburr with the rough side of the stone, and I hone it with the fine side of the stone in order to make sure I have a nice repeatable edge that I can get anywhere in the world, with or without power. If I'm at back country, I'm backpacking or hiking a mountain, I know that I have these tools available to me. File may or may not have, depending on the trip. Anything over a week, absolutely bringing a file, because resetting a bevel can save your knife in a tough situation. Alright, so that's the one we covered here today. If you have questions or comments, please leave them down below. I love having the interaction. We've already had a couple of questions on other videos that led me to film these videos that we're filming now. So that is nice to have that level of interaction, that level of personalization to our audience. So leave a comment. Like if you liked. If you enjoyed the content, we have a lot of other videos. We have a lot more coming. I've already filmed like 25 of these, and I'm putting them out every few days. So we should have months of content as we go down the road, and the list of ideas is just growing. We're having a great time with it. So subscribe if you want to see that stuff in the future, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.